Hello, Honors Biology. This is Mrs. Kozian, and this is going to be Unit 4, and this is going to be Video 4, Light-Dependent Reactions. Light-Dependent Reactions. We stopped in your Video 3 here. We learned about structure of a chloroplast, and we talked about just some of the aspects of the different reactions. Now we're going to talk about them a little more in detail, okay? I'm going to tell you guys how some of these events happen here in the light-dependent reactions. Now you already wrote this in your Video 3 notes, so you don't need to do that again. Okay, let's start with some of the vocabulary you're going to hear throughout these notes. The first is a photosystem. You're going to see photosystem 1 and photosystem 2. And those are clusters of chlorophyll and pigments. Okay, when we say photosystem, it's a whole bunch of chlorophyll and pigments that are going to capture sunlight for us and help us to turn that sunlight energy, to transfer it from light energy into chemical potential energy as high energy sugars. Okay. The second one's called the electron transport chain. Sometimes I'll say ETC instead. Those are chains of proteins that are going to help us to transfer high energy electrons. They're going to sort of pass them down the chain. Third one you're going to hear is a carrier molecule. This is a compound that's going to be able to accept those high energy electrons from an ETC and then transform them somewhere else. So example is one that we're going to have, that we're going to talk about a lot. It's called NADP+, okay? And so that's a positively charged ion. That means it has more protons than electrons. So it's got one less electron. And when we add an electron to that, or a hydrogen ion, okay, that's going to help turn it into NADPH. So a carrier molecule is going to help us. We're going to move an electron down this transport chain, and then the carrier molecule is going to help hook it to this NADP+ to make what we call NADPH. And you guys are going to see this picture over and over again in these notes as well, so that I can explain to you how this process works. Okay, first thing is light-dependent reactions happen in the thylakoid membranes. And if you guys remember, the thylakoid membranes are stacks of what looks like little green pancakes or coins, and they contain the green, the chlorophyll that makes your chloroplast what it is. So light-dependent reactions, we know chlorophyll absorbs light. You guys learned that in that chlorophyll graph where we're looking at chlorophyll reflects green and absorbs blue and violet. Well, the chlorophyll in that thylakoid membrane is the thing that we use in the light-dependent reactions. So it's going to use light. So the first thing that's going to happen is light's going to be absorbed by the first group of pigments called photosystem 2. Now here's what you have to remember. Photosystem 2 comes first. Okay? That photosystem 2, you can see it right here, its first job is it's going to break water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen. Okay, so we're going to end up with 2 H's and an O. Right? So that's his first job. So we already know from the beginning at Video 3 that one of the reactants that goes into the light-dependent reactions is water. Photosynthesis uses water and carbon dioxide. The reactant that the light-dependent reaction uses mostly is water, and then it's also going to use light energy to fuel the breakup into the 2 hydrogen ions and the oxygen. Okay? So photosystem 2 breaks water up into hydrogen and oxygen. Step 1. Next step. Those high energy electrons, those hydrogens, so we've gone through photosystem 2 right here. They're going to move through the electron transport chain, here it is, the ETC, to photosystem 1. So that's my next group of pigments. You can see light coming in, these photons, this light, this is my next group of pigments. We're going to use that light energy to fuel something. Then as they start to lose energy in the electron transport chain, they go to photosystem 1. The hydrogen ions are then forced from the stroma into the thylakoid membrane through a protein. Remember, it goes electron transport channel, then it's going to be ETC, electron transport chain, then it's going to be shoved through protein channels. Okay. Step 2. Step 3. The electrons that were released here by photosystem 2 are energized again in photosystem 1. So we took those electrons that we took off of that water, and we add light energy there, they get sort of a second wind there in photosystem 1. Enzymes in that membrane, they took the material out of the stroma, put it into the thylakoid membranes, and then we're going to use those electrons to form NADPH from NADP+. Remember, I had the hydrogen from my water, H2O. I take this as like a raw material into the light-dependent reaction, and I use light energy to add that H here. Okay, so now I have more energy in this as a product of light-dependent than I did in this compound as a reactant. So I came in with this as the raw material. I used energy from light to break that water up, and I added that hydrogen here to NADPH. So this right here is a product of the light-dependent reaction. Step 4, inside the thylakoids, remember my stacks of little green pancakes? There's a whole bunch of positively charged H+ ions, the ones that are left after I've made NADPH. The outside of the membrane is negatively charged, okay? My H+, those are positively charged ions. Outside is negative, and then that difference helps to sort of provide that electrical charge to form ATP. Remember, we form ATP, okay? So we form ATP when we add a phosphate to ADP, okay? So here's my raw material. I come in with this NADP plus and an H, and then I add an H to it, okay? Through my electron transport chain, I add an H to it. It's great. This ends up being one of my products of light-dependent reactions. Then that difference in charge from the hydrogen ions, okay? Remember active transport, you guys, we have higher concentration going to a lower concentration, but it's not always that way. Sometimes we go from lower to higher. So this is usually what we call active transport. And we have this imbalance where we have a charge on one side and a different charge on the other, and that charge helps us add that phosphate, okay? That gives us the energy to create ATP. Okay? So you guys, these are my products of light-dependent reaction. Okay? So it goes photosystem 2, electron transport chain. We get more energy in photosystem 1, down another electron transport chain. We make NADPH, and then from there, we have a protein channel that helps us make ATP. Okay? Last one, as hydrogen passes through, here's my carrier protein. Remember, my carrier protein helps me to add high energy electrons. We use that energy to make ADP into ATP. Okay? That ATP synthase, we call it. This carrier protein is called ATP synthase. Think of it like this. When you synthesize, you create something. ATP synthase makes ATP. Okay. All right, little review of light dependent, and I know that sounded really complicated to you guys, but here's the summary of what you need to know. Happens in the thylakoids, requires light, uses water. It also requires chlorophyll. Yes, we have to use chlorophyll in those photosystems. It's going to make oxygen. It's going to take ADP and turn it into ATP. That happens in the ATP synthase. We're going to take NADP+, we're going to add a hydrogen ion to it, make NADPH, and we're going to store energy. So you guys, the whole point of light dependent is to take energy from the sun and store it in useful molecules that we can use. Okay? That's the whole point of light dependent. So as you guys go through this, I want you to really focus on this summary right here of what light dependent is. Just another summary of the picture here, okay? Photosystem 2, we start. We have water comes in, and we use energy from the sun to break that water into oxygen and hydrogen. Then our ions are going to go through the electron transport chain. Again, they're going to get more of the sun's energy in photosystem 1. They're going to go through the electron transport chain again. Here we have oxygen's already been given off. We have all of our hydrogen ions. We're going to add one of them here to make NADPH, and we're going to use that imbalance of our charges to add a phosphate to ATP. So the whole point of light independent is to store energy in useful molecules. There are a lot of different animations out there about light dependent. Here's just a few of them, you guys. Feel free to get on YouTube and search for some of your own. There are quite a few on my website. There's also Khan Academy videos. If I were you, I would definitely look at some animations of light-dependent reactions just so that you can see exactly what's happening. All right, I'm going to show you one that I have up here. I'm going to show you those 4 or 5 steps again. All right, Not what I wanted. Oh, sorry about that, guys. Here is my animation I wanted to show you. So we start first. These are my little thylakoids, my little stacks of green pancakes. Okay, and this is just showing one thylakoid. You guys can see the lipid bilayer right here. We're going to start, we've got photosystem 2, photosystem 1, energy from the sun coming in, water coming in right here. We're going to start, my electron flows through. My electron's going to flow through photosystem 2. Okay, I'm going to play it one more time. Energy from the sun comes in, photosystem 2 gets another boost here, goes through my next electron transport chain, gets added to NADPH. Reactant for light-dependent product. Second thing that happens is we're going to split water molecules. It's where I'm going to get those positively charged hydrogen ions from, and oxygen gets put out. All right. Next, I'm going to pump protons through. Okay, that mismatch of charges helps us to fuel active transport to pump those protons through. And last, at the end, you guys, that pumping of the protons helps us to make ATP. So you guys, that is light-dependent reactions.